here to talk about some movies with the team here. Once again, we've got Ken Lee, Crankfile, Wayne Demers, Dope Sheet, Tyler Hamill.
I just work here.
Very important person here. And Chris Mills, owner of Great Stories. So we've got a few things to talk about movie-wise. We're going to start it off, or actually we'll throw it over to Wayne since he's the expert.
Okay, so we have Batman and Harley Quinn. That was a one-night, one-presentation release out in theaters. The next day it went. It was available digitally, and I believe right now it's available on DVD and Blu-ray. So what you need to know about Batman and Harley Quinn is it's drawn in the Batman the Animated Series style, and the voicing for Batman and, in this case, Nightwing was also the voice of Batman and Robin back in the animated series. So it's really cool to get those voices back. Harley Quinn is... she looks like herself. She's not voiced by the same actress, but the new actress that does her voice, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but she's actually on The Big Bang Theory. She does a great job. She does a great job with Harley Quinn. So the story basically is you have four or five main characters in here. You have Batman, you have Nightwing, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and Floronic Man. And I guess Floronic Man came from way back when, and now they've just kind of thrown him in here. And there's also a nice reference to Swamp Thing. So,
oh, that's cool.
So yeah, it was really cool.
Right.
I gotta tell you, to me, that was probably my favorite part of this movie. The bad here, and I'll try to make it really brief, is that although you have the styling for Batman the Animated Series, the storytelling just isn't there. Even though we're talking Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, I feel like this is a step down. I think the writing isn't there. There are very long scenes that could have been cut down, and if you start cutting them down, your runtime for this movie actually runs about 60 minutes. Wow. So you're really talking about 2 episodes worth of content. Yeah. The thing I disliked the most was I feel like we're starting to exploit Harley Quinn as a female character. She's put in positions in this movie where they're kind of degrading, and for just female characters as a whole, and I feel like she's overly sexualized in this movie. Not only does she kind of she's definitely interested in one of the male characters in this film, and then by the end of the film we find out that she may also be interested in a female character in this film. So to me that takes away from the story. I don't necessarily know that we always need to know that Harley Quinn is a very sexual character, and I feel as though the way that they're portraying her actually takes away from who she is. So that's where I am. I don't feel that the writing in this one is up there on par with what we've seen in the past. So if you're a parent and you have younger kids, please watch this one on your own first before you just watch it with your kids. Mm-hmm. I would think anybody under the age of 13, I probably would watch it with them or watch it prior to.
Mm-hmm. Good advice.
So yeah, I'm a little disappointed.
I'm sorry to hear that, but Melissa Rauch, I believe, is, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, I believe is the voice.
Yeah.
She
plays Bernadette.
Something like that. Yeah.
I can see that. Hearing her voice in my head and then thinking like Harley Quinn back from the animated series, like I can see why they chose her.
Yeah, I think she did a pretty good job, to be honest with you. And I had no problem with it. I saw some people on the internet, and they're just loyalists to the original voice actress, who I love and adore as the voice of that character. But we have to move on, and we've done that with Batman, we've done it with Superman, and all the other hero characters and villains. I'm fine with it. I thought she did a really good job.
All right. So that one, I guess, is on Blu-ray and DVD right now.
Yep.
So check it out. Let's see. I think you also want to talk Close Encounters,
Encounters,
right?
yeah. So
recently got a re-release.
Labor Day weekend, starting on Thursday, we had the release of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 40th anniversary. It was released in 4K. Now, to me, that's kind of a gimmick, because if you're not, filming in IMAX, you're not filming in 4K, then if you had a blurry version, you're going to get a blurry version in 4K. So there's no big, to me, that's just kind of a gimmick. And the thing I will say was the color was very vivid, and so that was really nice. To me, right now, what we have in the theaters, there's nothing that can beat, actually, Close Encounters. There's no story or any movie that's better than Close Encounters. So if you haven't seen it, and you have an opportunity to go see it on the big screen, please do, because I saw it, really enjoyed it on the big screen. There's a small snippet at the beginning with some of the behind the scenes with Steven Spielberg, with him shooting his own home video. And so that was interesting to see how they filmed a few scenes and him to talk about the movie. So really cool stuff. If you have an opportunity to check that out, please do. It's well worth the price of admission. Let's see, another one that I saw recently was Birth of the Dragon. Now, real quick, this is a Bruce Lee story about Bruce Lee and his fight that he has with the Shaolin monk. That's true. Okay. Everything else that I've done a little bit of research on that they used in the movie, I feel is definitely, the story is not the same as what I'm seeing.
Over-elaborated, maybe.
Over-elaborated, truth changed, story changed a little bit. The premise here is that Bruce Lee ended up fighting a Shaolin monk in a warehouse, so to speak, with only 12 people, very limited. Few people saw this fight happen, and that was intentional. And why they have the fight per the movie is not what I'm finding online with as to why they had this fight. How the fight ends is there's different of the people who saw the fight. There's two sides to what's been saying as to how the fight ended. Okay. Nonetheless, the movie is enjoyable. I enjoyed the fight scenes, and probably some of the best action fight scenes I've seen in a movie in some time. So that was worth going to see. The acting was exceptional. I really enjoyed the acting. The one thing I'll say I did not like was the portrayal of Bruce Lee leading up to this event. Now, this is prior to Bruce Lee getting his gig on TV in the Green Hornet. So he's portrayed as extremely confident, cocky, and brash. And that comes across just the way he talks to a lot of people, how he runs his, I don't know if they call it a dojo, but his learning, where he was teaching Kung Fu. So I don't really know if this is really Hollywood trying to paint him as being cocky and brash, because when you watch any video of Bruce Lee when he's trying to do some instruction, he does not come across in any of the true videos as the way this movie portrayed him. So I feel like that's just the way that the storytellers of this movie are trying to get you to say, wow, really? And then you have this fight and he has this revelation of a deeper meaning in his life, and then he changes to the more calming, peaceful, more knowledgeable Bruce Lee. So to me, I didn't buy that. I didn't care for that. So on the whole, I wasn't too high on that movie, but I love the action. I love Bruce Lee. The acting was incredible. So to me, that's worth checking out. I liked it. Okay. So if you haven't checked that out, please do.
So Netflix has been producing a lot of really cool stuff, and we typically associate Netflix with a lot of more like TV series format stuff, but they just recently released Death Note.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's an actual Netflix movie, and it kind of basically adapts the famous anime, and I think Tyler, you've got some thoughts on it.
So both myself and Ken have seen the movie.
And
I've seen it as well.
We've have you read the manga as well?
No.
So
But I heard that the anime is a pretty literal one-to-one representation.
Yeah, it's pretty spot on. So essentially what you have from this movie is more of an Americanized adaptation of the general concept behind the story rather than trying to take the anime and make it into a movie, which for anyone who's seen any of the Death Note movies that were created over in Japan that were supposed to do that, generally fails. Because there's a lot of stuff that you can get away with in anime that just doesn't really work in real life.
Also a different format. You're talking about a series that went for 34 half-hour episodes and trying to condense that down into an hour-and-a-half movie. Yeah. This is stuff that's just not going to
it just doesn't work. Even if you break it up into several, sections, like first part, second part, kind of filmology. So what you have here is probably the first, I want to say like 6 to 12 episodes worth of the storyline kind of broken down into an hour-and-a-half movie, and my personal take on it, which the internet widely disagrees with, is it was actually pretty good. I thought overall the acting was pretty on par for a movie of its, I think it was only like $40 million budget on it, which isn't really all that big considering movies nowadays, but kind of big for Netflix. A couple of pretty A-list actors, like you had Ryuk was voiced by William Dafoe, which I was really happy with. And there's a lot of people that said that they hated the fact that Ryuk was always in the shadows. You won't really get to see him. But the thing is, this is a god of death. This is an entity that you don't get to see. So even if you have a character that has this ability to bear witness to this being, this entity, of course it's going to stay in the shadows. Of course it's going to be mysterious and dark and evil. And all you really get to see is like the eyes and the shadows of its body.
And I think with monsters it works better, right?
Yeah.
Your imagination kind of fills it in and makes it a little more scary. I think that was a great way of them actually just showing, not showing too much.
Exactly. Right. Which they didn't really succeed so well with the other real adaptations that they did over in Japan. I think the major premise of this is that it is very Americanized. So you have a lot of the characters are now, some of their names are changed to seem more American. The story takes place in San Diego? Seattle. Yeah. It's one of those. Takes place in Seattle as opposed to in Japan. But it follows the same premise. You get a lot of the same characters. I think one of the biggest issues that a lot of people had is that they believed it was either moved too fast or there was no real character development, which
points.
They are, but I can kind of see the reason why. The beginning seems very rushed, but it's because I think the core of what the story was all about was that kind of interaction between L and Light, and L coming to understand how it is that Light could end up being this guy who's causing this barrage of murders and how he's capable of doing it. But really, that's kind of to get the build-up that you're looking for, from the anime in the movie, you're not going to get the same experience because that build-up took place over the course of 4 to 6 episodes versus they only had an hour and a half runtime for the entire film, and they needed to get to the conclusion of what L and Light were doing here. And but other than that, I think the portrayal of the L character was just absolutely spot on. This is pretty much the only thing that you could have asked for them to take from the anime and make it real in this movie was that character portrayal. Even though, he was Japanese in the movie, but he's African American in this movie. No, he's Japanese in the anime. And he's African American, but even the actor that they chose was he's just absolutely spot on. You could have made the whole movie about him, and it would have been a lot better. Other than that, I thought it was pretty good. I couldn't complain about the character development because in the beginning of the movie they really hint that these extremes that they seem to jump back and forth between. You can tell that they pretty much show those extremes exist within the character prior to these events unfolding, and the Death Note really becomes this catalyst for these extremes to be realized without really understanding the possibilities of the repercussions to come. And you get to this point where you have characters that go two different paths. They either realize, what this is creating and the repercussions that are being created from using this Death Note, and some of them continue on this path, this extreme path that they have now taken, and some of them stop and we can't do this. They have this realization that maybe this wasn't a good idea after all, and they go back. And I think it's a brilliant take on the story that really doesn't stray too far away from what the anime expresses.
The core of it is, the road to hell is lined with good intentions, right?
Exactly. And I think it does an excellent job of following that basic storyline, even if it isn't your...
So you and I have obviously watched both, so our views are slightly colored by that. I'd like to hear what the two guys who haven't seen the anime thought about the movie.
If you've seen it.
Would you like to start?
Sure. I did not see anime, but I've seen some of the artwork. Just kind of breeze through the paper-bound book, I guess is. So I enjoyed the movie, and I felt though the story was rushed. Although I didn't know how much material they were drawing from, but I felt like the story was pushed along too far. My personal opinion is I wish Netflix had done this as a series versus the movie, because I felt like there could have been more character development. With the story with L, I was always saying, well, how the heck did he come up with all of this? How did he deduce this? And but you're just left to say, okay, he did. So we keep moving along. The only thing that I didn't particularly care about was William Dafoe does a great job with the voice, but I could not separate the character or I couldn't bring the character and the voice together to see it as one. I kept hearing William Dafoe and watching this character. And by the way, the character is a great representation of who it is in the books. And from what I've seen as the anime, I was so happy that they really did bring that character to life on the screen. And as far as being in the shadows, I love that. Yep. Especially with the red eyes and everything. I said, wow, I really liked it.
Very effective.
Yeah, I thought so. So for me, having not known too much about the background, that's pretty much most of my drawbacks for that. And I also kind of felt like, why would he share his knowledge about this book that he relatively just kind of got with this girl that he loves?
We all know exactly why.
I say he loves, but he likes her. But I'm just like, I don't think he would have done that. Not that fast, that's for darn right. But okay, so that's my take on it. Chris, what's yours?
Well, not that fast, right? Well, wouldn't have solved the mystery that fast either, just as you had mentioned before. It seemed everything was condensed artificially, which doesn't justify the story in my mind. And I'm saying that as someone who hasn't read the source material. I've not seen the Japanese original takes on the story. L seemed kind of almost like a superhero to me. The fact that he could piece this whole thing together, in such a quick fashion. But aside from that, I don't want to sound like a broken record. One thing that did intrigue me was the relationship between the two the holder of the Death Note,
Light and Maya.
And Maya.
Misa, for those of you who bears a resemblance in character, but is in her own way a very different character from Misa.
Oh, definitely.
And it seems like there's an undertone here about love. And how love does not conquer vengeance. That's which I couldn't get over. This whole encounter between these two characters, and how there was this deep distrust, even though there was this supposedly this love connection between the two characters, which never really fully develops.
I don't know, man. There's that scene where the two of them are just sharing that bed, killing people, and that was hot, man. I've never been so turned on by murder in my life.
Exactly. That's what I was like. This is really more about lust than love. Yeah. This is about two people being drunk on power, and one having a crisis of conscience, and the other one saying, "Just give me that damn book," because I'm going to continue this, and just willing to do some terrible
and
things.
Watch her, he dies, and it's not even really worth watching after
but So that's the thing that struck me about it the most. I think was that relationship,
and I tend to agree with
and how he could actually continue to love the person who's so willing to discard the people that were so important to him.
Yeah.
You know, and that really kind of made me question some of the characters' motives. That being said, I really did enjoy the movie. I thought it was well executed. I just wish, as I think all of you mentioned, that it probably should have been in a longer format so we could actually see the story develop and things not seem so artificially pushed forward. But I think well done by Netflix, generally.
Yeah.
And they kind of left it off where, like, you can pretty much assume what happened, but doesn't necessarily mean that is what happened in the end, which leaves it kind of open-ended for them to possibly come back and continue the storyline if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think the anime had its own issues. I think both the anime and the movie both had issues as far as concluding things.
Yeah.
The anime seemed to get a little too convoluted at the end, drew things out, and didn't quite know how to actually close it out without pulling a little bit of the Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Whereas the Netflix is like, it just didn't have enough time to really build. Like with the way they were using the notebook wasn't there was no indication that suddenly he'd be able to write this long paragraph and start controlling people with the notebook. That never was really played out as much as it did in the anime. But the fact that they were different, actually, I enjoyed. Like, I didn't want to see a one-for-one remake of the original material. It kept it interesting for me. I was like, oh, this is new.
Yeah, they changed up a lot of things. Like the keeper concept of the Death Note and some of the rules that they had added were not actually part of the original anime.
Stuck with the theme of the corrupting power, the corrupting nature of this power, which is fantastically done. But like a lot of you guys said, some of the stuff didn't work just because of the timing stuff. I didn't care for the ending as much as some other people did. I just think it didn't pay off.
I think it was just an ending.
Yeah, I did like the relationship between Mia and Light in the Netflix version. I think it's more interesting than the version we had in the anime, where Light was basically just controlling Misumi, and she was just like a tool for him to use. There wasn't this dynamic relationship between the two, which I thought was an interesting addition to this Netflix movie. The one thing that I will say that I really didn't like is that none of the lead characters were cast as Asian actors. And this being anime, I felt like at least one of the characters should have been cast as an Asian. They decided not to. I thought that was
Wait, what about the guy that worked with
Watari? We agreed that Watari doesn't count.
He's like, I'm talking like me, and I'm like, Light, L, or Mia. Like, I thought one of them should have been cast as an Asian character. They decided not to because
if they cast Light, I think they could have cast Light as like an Asian actor, and you wouldn't have lost.
Or Mia.
Mia, I kind of liked the character because she kind of had the facial expressions to go with the insanity behind her.
But I think you can find an actress to do it. That's just
I'm not
taking anything away from the actors. I think the actor that did Mia was fantastic. I think the actor that played L was amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't think about replacing him.
The actor that played Light he was okay.
And that's what I mean. Like, if they were if you could have really replaced anyone for the role that they were going for, I think they could have replaced Light, maybe even got a better performance depending on who the actor was. But I think if we got anything but the L that we got, it would have been a lost experience.
We'll definitely check out Death Note on Netflix. For all of you who don't have Netflix, what are you doing?
Yeah, and the anime's on there too. So if you saw Death Note the movie, you're interested in it. Watch Death Note the anime. You'll definitely get more of a backstory. A lot of the characters are fleshed out more.
Yeah.
It's a different experience. And it's just as enjoyable, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Also on the small screen, I had the opportunity to watch a movie called Get Out, which did pretty well in the movie theaters. Actually, this was a horror, thriller, mystery type movie. I'm starting to typecast myself here as the horror fan, but someone's got to represent. And so this movie was one of those, it was a lot better than I expected it to be. I understand why it did so well in the theaters. It is a movie that basically is about an interracial couple in that that fearful moment where you got to meet the parents. All right, so Daniel Kaluuya, I believe is the pronunciation of his name, is the guy who plays the male lead role, and Allison Williams, I believe, is the actress who plays his girlfriend, and they go back to their backwoods estate where the parents live, and there's this whole encounter basically where he meets basically her family and the entire cast of like friends and associates of the family. Now, the movie is, I don't know how to say this, it is very uncomfortable to watch in certain spots. You basically have a bunch of white people who are trying to identify or bending over backwards to identify with his blackness. And it makes for some really like cringe-worthy moments where there's an encounter, and it's very intended that way. And you can just see the discomfort on the face of the actor as he's receiving these, and the character as he's receiving this information from the white people around him. He's already in a foreign situation, which is uncomfortable enough, and he doesn't know how to react to these people. And there's
and it's played by the very funny Jordan Peele from the Key and Peele Peele's show.
Yes,
skit comedy show.
Love
Funny
it.
dude.
That's right.
Funny guy.
And yes, he directed this very well. And the movie ends up taking a turn. And I don't want to give away what the plot twist is or anything like that, but you might never see Bingo the same way ever again. It's got a very weird scene, a very creepy scene actually. It's almost got a cultish vibe to it. There's a little bit of fantastical science involved, and I'm not going to go any further in the details there, but I definitely recommend this movie. It's got a share of gruesomeness with some violence, on-screen violence, so if you're or you're watching it with a date or something like that, or your wife, like in my case, I would never show it to her. She wouldn't be able to handle it. But it's a worthwhile entry in the horror pantheon, so I recommend it highly.
Not your typical horror type plot line, is it? I mean,
No,
we're all
it's-
terrified of the prospect of meeting, the
Yeah,
parents,
yeah,
but
yeah.
traditionally, not your general fodder for a scary movie.
It really isn't, and this movie has some very subtle influences, and you can see those influences, but it doesn't steal directly from them. It's more like atmospheric in that sense. The influences kind of shine through there, but really it kind of takes its own direction, and it gives you something that really feels fresh. So, and that's so good on the filmmakers there.
Nice.
Well
Cool.
done.
Cool.
And I think that's about it for our movie talk.
Yeah.
So, anyway, signing off.
Ken from the Crank Files. Read me every Tuesday.
Wayne Demers on The Dope Sheet. You can find me at facebook.com/thedopesheet or on Twitter, The Dope Sheet.
I'm Tyler Himmel. I work down here at Great Stories, so come and visit me in Uxbridge. Our information is on our Facebook page or on shopgreatstories.com.
And at shopgreatstories.com, you'll find a host of other great blogs as well. We've got Rob Goyer with Cards and Counters for the gaming fans out there. And we're also starting to do small screen reviews called Remote Patrol. So check those out, and we'll see you next time.